Hello everybody and welcome back. Thanks for tuning in to the next segment in this tutorial. In the last episode we went over building or populating the second activity with what we select from the first activity. And so you can click any one of these tiles, click to learn more, and you'll kind of go to like a detailed view, and then you can navigate backwards. So pretty good stuff so far, but I'd like to continue on talking about a little bit more in depth something that we started or briefly touched on a few episodes ago, talking about the options selected and this whole idea of like a menu item and a menu. And for our use case right now, we're hooking into this back button. However, it's pretty common practice to have other views up here in the toolbar. So we're going to go ahead and create a menu, inflate it, and handle the on click there. So first things first, let's actually create the menu. So you'll notice here in the resource folder of the project view, you actually don't start with a menu folder like some of these other ones like layout, drawable, map, which has to do with all of your launcher icons, and then values that has a few other like, config-like properties. You don't actually have a menu one to start. So we're going to go ahead and create a new Android resource directory. It's going to bring up this interesting UI that gives you a little bit more like flexibility around certain things, which we can eventually get into. But for now, we're just going to create our menu, our name to be menu, and then also our resource type. As you can see here, the predefined ones for Android, we're going to just select menu as well. So we're going to go ahead, hit OK. We have a blank menu file. We go ahead and create a menu or blank menu folder. We're going to create menu resource file, and let's call this menu let's be verbose soccer tile detail. Okay. It's going to bring up things in the design view. However, I don't really, I guess other than maybe dragging a menu item in there, I don't really use this. I'll just traditionally do it here in code. Go ahead and define an item here. It's going to take an ID so that we can reference it in code, and we're going to call this one menu item link. Title, I'm just going to say link, and then show as action. We're going to do always here because we're only going to have one option at the moment. But as you can see, there's a few other options here that kind of, like if room or never, and that'll determine if it ends up looking like this, where it's just the overflow menu is what we call it, and then they can select an item from here, which this list could grow to like, 5, 6, 7, however many items you want. But we're going to do always so that it sits in the toolbar there. It'll actually have text for now, but we're going to go ahead and grab an icon for it real quick. So again, we're going to open the resource manager. Don't worry about it. You don't need to actually have a resource. We're going to click on vector asset and clip art. And then if you click this clip art thing, it'll actually bring up the material icons, basically page that you can get to. I'll link the page in the description, but you're able to kind of get to like an in-editor view of it and actually download and bring in what you need. So I'm trying to look for a specific icon. Let me find it. Here we go. What I was looking for was actually called public. Interestingly enough, you can change, some of them don't do it, but you can change this like different little like modification on it as well, and it'll kind of, I don't know, in some cases it'll change certain icons, but this one doesn't. So we're just going to use this little globe here. So these are the icons that Google recommends that you use for specific things. So if you have a pretty generic action you know, and there's even some oddball ones in here. You know, you should look through here first. There's a whole bunch of resources that you can use here, free of course, and suggested, and then it'll also make your app feel fluid, so that other users who are actually using it recognize, oh, that's the traditional share icon, that's the traditional, you know, save or delete or, you know, whatever icon. So um, we are gonna click that, click OK. I'm gonna rename it. It's pretty common practice to start with IC underscore for these icons. So I'm just gonna name it IC, and in our case we're gonna do link, and then I kind of like to just set 24dp at the end of it as well, just to be verbose. It's up to you, whatever name you want to call it. I would leave the size as is, and I would leave the color completely black, only because you'd rather have the asset completely black and tint it than have icons with different colors. So you basically only need one icon, and then you can just tint it whatever color you want. And so with that in our project, go ahead and say icon, what do we call it? We called it IC link, and then boom, now we have an icon here. So we have a menu file ready to go. So menu soccer tile detail, I will go ahead and just close that real quick, and we're going to hook into this as well. So we're going to override the on create options menu. This returns a Boolean, so we're going to return true to let the system know that we are taking control here, and we're going to inflate a menu right here, so it doesn't need to look any further. We're going to do so with the menu inflator. It requires a context. We're using the activity context in this case, and then we're going to invoke the inflate function, where we're going to reference r.menu, .menu soccer tile, and then pass in the menu that was passed to this function. And r.menu, hopefully you can see how that would reference the resources.menu folder, and then specifically this XML file. So you should be able to kind of understand where certain assets are just based upon the structure that they follow. So it's relatively convenient, to be honest. Okay, and then let's just go ahead and run it real quick. We will see what we have. Well, we have our option of link in this little overflow, so let's see what's going on here. Okay, a quick little dive around in Google led me to the fact that I was actually creating my own menu inflator instead of using the one provided to you that you can get at the activity level. So just make sure to make that adjustment, and then everything will work as expected. Order and category, I thought maybe it needed that, but it actually did not. That would basically be if you have multiple items in here, you can actually order them left to right, or when they're within this drop-down menu, you know, top to bottom. So you can kind of put, you know, like your logout feature at the bottom of the list. But as you can see in the UI here, it's black because of the asset being black, but it doesn't really fit our white theme that's going on here. So we can just apply an icon tint. I had the right idea here with the icon tint, however it was within the app namespace, not the Android namespace was the one that I was looking for, having issues with it otherwise. But nevertheless, we are able to completely manage the UI here of this layout of this menu item in the XML. I kind of wanted to avoid tinting it in code because I figured we could do it through XML, and so we actually can. You see here, if you hold down, it'll actually bring up this little like sub menu there saying link. I guess that's, you know, for accessibility reasons, but the item itself actually needs that in order to be for the emulator or sorry, for the IDE to accept the menu file as legitimate. But as you can see, when we click on it, nothing actually happens. So we can go ahead and do something here. So if we say when our item ID that was being selected is the menu item link, we are going to first of all return true, and then we're going to, link / navigate the user here with our soccer tile item that we have here. So this return statement, hopefully you guys can get the idea here, but you can have multiple lines of code here, and because we're putting it in front of a return, or we're basically assigning it to some value, whatever is the last line in each block is what's going to be returned in this case. So if we were to flip this over, now it has an issue here. It says it found unit, meaning nothing was returned, but it requires a Boolean. So if you have true being the last statement, or false, or some kind of expression that would evaluate to a Boolean, you're good to go. So that's why I just kind of throwing a true randomly at the end of this block, but know that it's because it's being returned here, which the function requires it. So we are going to quickly update this guy. So let's say team URL is going to be a string that we need. I'm going to go ahead and populate these and then put them in here. So I will be right back. Okay, so we have updated all of our soccer tiles here with the team URL that we're going to go ahead and display, and or we're going to use. We're not going to display it. And then let's see here. The URL that we're going to use is our soccertile.team URL, but we're going to go ahead and create this as a class level variable here because we need it referenced outside this function. And so we'll just go ahead and do that. The lateinit modifier, if I haven't talked about it before, is just telling the IDE that we're not initializing this object here yet at the moment. We will do it at some later point, because if we just said private var, you must initialize it or have it be abstract. So because we kind of just want to get away from that, and we don't have the ability to we're just going to initialize it at some later date, we need to we're just going to go ahead and use the lateinit modifier. But beware, there is the ability to reference this thing before it actually is initialized. So this little function here inside our lateinit.kt file is initialized, will return a Boolean here that tells you if this object has been initialized or not. So every time you could potentially run into some kind of race condition where an action will happen before this object has been initialized, you can wrap it in some kind of if statement saying if it is initialized, then you can run your code, or otherwise if it is not initialized, you can return early, and then otherwise you do whatever you got to do down here. So just be aware that you can actually crash the application that way, but there is a way for you to safely check and reference if it is safe to use that object, essentially. So if we run it again real quick, and we go ahead and click the menu label, we'll see right here the URL that we want to navigate them to is out here ready to go. So in the next video, we're going to go ahead and discuss how to launch a user outside of your application. It will be pretty straightforward, but for now, I'm going to go ahead and cut the video here, and then we will pick it up from there.